What are the 10 pieces of hunting gear that outfitters and pro hunters buy every pre-season while the rest of us are still arguing about brands on internet forums? Because the guys who fill tags for a living do not shop the way recreational hunters shop. They do not buy the most expensive option. They do not buy the cheapest option. They buy the specific model at the specific price point that delivers 90% of the performance at 40% of the cost. And they buy it in June when the prices drop before demand spikes in September. I spent 28 years buying gear the wrong way before a guide buddy sat me down after a hunt in S.E., Wyoming, that sagebrush and creek bottom country east of Casper where the mule deer share habitat with whitetails along the North Platte River breaks, and told me I had $4,000 of gear in my truck and $400 of skill in the field. He was not wrong. And the gear he was carrying that day, the stuff he uses when it is his own tag on the line, cost roughly half what mine did. I am going to walk through the 10 categories where pro hunters spend their money differently than recreational hunters, with specific models, specific prices, and the specific reason each one outperforms the more expensive option your buddy at deer camp swears by. If you have a gear recommendation that outperforms what I cover, I want to hear the model and the price. Stay until the end because number 10 is the cheapest item on this list, costs under $30, and the guide who taught me this system said it has saved more hunts than any single piece of gear he owns. Number 1. Tree stands. Most hunters buy a Summit Viper SD at $350 or a Lone Wolf Alpha 2 at $400 because those are the stands that get recommended on every forum and every YouTube channel. Pro hunters who hang 15 to 20 stands per season buy the Hawk Helium at $180. The Helium weighs 12 pounds, roughly the weight of a bowling ball, compared to 20 pounds for the Viper and 15 for the Alpha. At 12 pounds, you can carry the stand, sticks, a bow, and a pack on a single trip without burning your legs before the hunt starts. I carried a 20-pound climber for 6 seasons and spent the first 30 minutes of every sit sweating out the approach. The season I switched to the Helium and a set of 4 Hawk climbing sticks at $70, I cut my entry sweat by more than half and stopped getting alarm blows from does 20 minutes into the sit. The stand gives up some platform size compared to the Viper. It is 18 by 24 inches, roughly the size of a large pizza box, versus 22 by 30 on the Summit. But a stand you can carry quietly to a new location in 15 minutes is worth more than a stand that is comfortable but too heavy to move when the wind changes. The one situation where the Helium falls short is all-day rut sits. If you are sitting from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., the smaller platform starts to wear on you by hour 6. For all-day sits, I still use a Millennium M150 at $250, with the larger seat and wider platform. I hang the Millennium on my rut stands in October and leave them up for the season. The Helium is the run-and-gun stand for early season when I am adjusting to daily wind changes and acorn drop patterns. 2 stands, 2 purposes. The pro hunters I know own both. Number 2. Crossbows and bows. The 10-point Titan M1 at $1,600 and the Bowtech Revolt at $1,100 are what the pro shops push because the margins are highest. The crossbow pro hunters are buying is the Killer Instinct Boss 405 at $400. The bow pro hunters are buying is the Bear Archery Legit at $350. The Killer Instinct shoots 405 feet per second at a price point that is roughly 1/4 of the 10-point. Is the 10-point a better crossbow? In terms of trigger quality and dampening, yes. In terms of putting a bolt through the kill zone of a whitetail at 40 yards, roughly the distance from home plate to second base, the Killer Instinct does the same job. A buddy who guides in the SC Low Country, that flat Tidal Creek and Live Oak country, between Beaufort and Charleston, where the deer are smaller bodied but dense, and the shots rarely exceed 25 yards, about the distance from home plate to first base, runs Killer Instinct crossbows for all his clients, because they can take the abuse of 200 client hunts per season and still group inside 3 inches at 40 yards. His words, not mine, and one outfitter is not a product review. But when a man who depends on a crossbow for his income chooses the $400 option over the $1,600 option, that tells you something about where the money actually goes. On the compound bow side, the Bear Archery Legit at $350 adjustable from 14 to 70 pounds of draw weight is the bow most guides hand to a first-time bow hunter because the draw weight can be adjusted without a bow press. A returning hunter, who has not pulled a bow in 15 years, can start at 45 pounds and work up to 65 over a summer of practice. The Bowtech Revolt is a better bow in terms of valley and back wall feel. But the Bear shoots a deer-killing arrow at 315 feet per second and puts broadheads through both lungs at 30 yards the same way a $1,100 bow does. I bought a Hoyt Carbon RX-5 at $1,500 my first season with a compound, and killed my first archery deer the following year with a borrowed Bear Legit at $350, after the Hoyt developed a cam lean issue that cost $180 to fix. The cheaper bow spent more time in my hands at the range because I was not afraid to beat it up practicing in the rain. Number 3. Rifle Scopes and Optics. The Leupold VX Freedom at $250 and the Vortex Diamondback Tactical at $350 are what pro hunters mount on their deer rifles instead of the $800 to $1,200 scopes that the tactical shooting community swears by. A whitetail is killed inside 200 yards on roughly 80% of rifle harvests in the eastern United States, according to data from multiple state wildlife agencies. At 200 yards, you do not need a $1,000 scope with 25x magnification and mil-dot reticles. You need clear glass, reliable tracking, and a simple duplex reticle that puts the crosshair on the shoulder at first light and last light when the glass quality matters most. Research from the Sporting Arms and Ammunition Manufacturers Institute documented that low-light performance in rifle scopes is determined primarily by objective lens diameter and glass coating quality, not by magnification or turret features. A 39x40 scope with fully multi-coated lenses at $250 gathers enough light for the first and last 15 minutes of legal shooting light, which is when roughly 60% of rifle buck kills occur. My buddy in SE, Wyoming, runs a Vortex Diamondback on a Savage 110 at $450. Total rifle and scope investment is $800. He has killed antelope, mule deer, and whitetails with that setup for 7 consecutive seasons, without a single malfunction. The one exception to the mid-range scope rule is if you hunt open agricultural country, where 300-yard shots are common. In that case, a Vortex Viper PST Gen 2 at $700 with a 5-25x50 objective gives you the magnification and turret precision you need for longer shots. But on eastern whitetail ground where the timber closes shooting lanes to 150 yards or less, the $250 scope handles every shot you will ever take. I ran a $900 Leupold VX5 HD on a deer rifle for 3 seasons in New Hampshire, where my longest shot was 110 yards. I was carrying $900 of glass into timber, where $250 of glass would have produced the same result. That $650 difference bought me 2 SpyPoint cellular cameras and a season of intel I would not have had otherwise. Quick pause here. Everything I just walked through, and 100 more tricks like it, is sitting inside the Buck Hunter's Bible, 2026 edition. 280 pages of the stuff that actually puts deer on the ground. And right now, if you grab it, I am throwing in the 30-day opening day roadmap completely free. That is a 60-page day-by-day pre-season plan that walks you from the first scout to opening morning, so you start this season ahead of every other hunter in the woods. Link in the description, QR code on screen. This is the season you stop guessing. Number 4. Trail cameras. SpyPoint Flex at $100, with cellular capability, and the Browning Strike Force at $80, without cellular, are the 2 cameras pro hunters buy. The Reconyx Hyperfire 2, at $450, takes better photos. Nobody argues that. But a pro hunter running 8 cameras across 2 properties is spending either $800 on SpyPoints or $3,600 on Reconyx for the same number of camera locations. The SpyPoint Cellular sends photos to your phone without a physical card pull, which means 0 scent contamination at the camera site. Research from Penn State documented that human scent deposited at trail camera locations during card pulls is detectable by deer for up to 48 hours, and reduces mature buck daytime visitation at that site by roughly 30% for the following week. A $100 cellular camera that you never visit produces better mature buck intelligence than a $450 camera you check every 2 weeks. I wasted 3 seasons pulling cards on foot before a guide told me I was contaminating every camera site I owned. The $100 spy point was the solution. The cellular feature also lets you make real-time hunt decisions. A buck photographed at a scrape at 11 p.m. on a north wind is likely bedded within 400 yards of that scrape by dawn. A hunter who receives that photo at midnight can adjust his morning stand selection based on where the buck was 5 hours ago. That kind of real-time intelligence from a $100 camera produces more filled tags than a $450 camera that sits on a tree for 2 weeks, collecting data you will not see until the season is half over. Number 5. Hunting boots. Danner pronghorn at $200 and Irish setter Vaportrek at $160 are what pro hunters wear instead of the $400 to $500 premium boots from Kenetrek or Crispy. A whitetail hunter walking 1 to 3 miles per day on relatively flat terrain does not need a mountain boot designed for 10-mile days in the Rockies. He needs a waterproof boot with 400 to 800 grams of Thinsulate insulation that weighs under 2.5 pounds per boot, roughly the weight of a quart of milk, and keeps his feet dry in 30-degree mornings. The Danner pronghorn at 400 grams of insulation is the boot most outfitters in the eastern whitetail range wear from October through December. I wore $400 Kenetreks for 2 seasons on flat farm ground in New Hampshire, that mixed hardwood and dairy country between Keene and Claremont where the stone walls run through second-growth timber and the deer travel the old logging grades between pastures, before I realized I was wearing a mountain boot on terrain that never exceeded a 15-degree slope. The Danners do the same job on flat ground for half the price and dry overnight on a boot dryer instead of taking 2 days to dry like the heavier Kenetreks. The Irish setter Vaportrek at $160 is the other boot pro hunters buy, specifically for early season when temperatures are above 50 degrees and you need a lightweight waterproof boot with minimal insulation. At 800 grams total weight per pair, roughly the weight of a water bottle, the Vaportrek is the lightest hunting boot I have tested that still provides adequate ankle support on uneven ground. I wear Vaportreks from September through mid-October and switch to Danners when the temperature drops below 40. 2 boots, 2 seasons, total investment $360. That is less than 1 pair of Kenetreks that I wore year-round and was either sweating in during September or freezing in during December, because no single boot handles both extremes well. Number 6. Binoculars. This is where I disagree with every other gear recommendation on the internet. Swarovski EL at $2,400 and Zeiss Victory at $2,200 are the binoculars that every hunting magazine tells you to buy. They are spectacular glass. They are also roughly 10 times what a whitetail hunter needs to spend. The Vortex Diamondback HD 10x42 at $230 delivers edge-to-edge clarity that is indistinguishable from the Swarovski at distances under 400 yards in field conditions. I ran a blind test at a deer camp in New Hampshire, where I handed 4 hunters a Swarovski EL and a Vortex Diamondback, and asked them to glass a tree line at 300 yards, roughly 3 football fields, and tell me which binos were the expensive ones. 2 got it right, 2 got it wrong. At whitetail distances, the $230 glass does the job. Save the $2,000 for a lease payment or a second property. My wallet has strong opinions on this one. Look, I am going to be straight with you. Everything I am walking through in this video is just a small piece of what is inside the Buck Hunter's Bible, 2026 edition. 280 pages, 101 field-tested tricks. And right now, you also get the 30-day opening day roadmap free with it. A 60-page day-by-day plan that gets you ready before the season even starts. I do not know how long that bonus stays in the deal, but if you have been watching these videos and thinking this could be my season, that is the move. Link in the description below, QR code on screen. Make this the year. Number 7. Hunting packs. Sitka Mountain Hauler at $550 and Kifaru Nomad at $425 are built for western backcountry hunting, where you are carrying 60 to 80 pounds of meat and camp gear for miles. A whitetail hunter walking 1 mile to a tree stand with a bow, 2 bottles of water, a headlamp, calls, and scent products needs roughly 1,500 cubic inches of pack space. The Alps Outdoorsy Pathfinder at $60 delivers that capacity at a weight of 2 pounds, with a frame that distributes the load across your hips instead of your shoulders. I carried a $400 pack for 3 seasons before a buddy pointed out that my total pack weight on a whitetail sit was 8 pounds, roughly the weight of a gallon of milk, and I was carrying it in a pack designed for 60 pounds. He was right. The $60 Alps does the same job. The pack weight mistake is one of the most common gear errors in whitetail hunting, because the Western hunting media has convinced Eastern whitetail hunters that they need a pack designed for 10-day elk hunts in the backcountry. You are walking a mile on flat ground with 8 pounds of gear. You are not hauling a boned-out elk quarter over a mountain pass at 9,000 feet. Match the pack to the mission. A $60 pack for an 8-pound whitetail loadout is the right tool. A $550 pack for the same loadout is a status purchase that adds weight, bulk, and cost without improving a single aspect of your hunt. I ran the math on my gear spending over 10 seasons, and the pack category was where I wasted the most money per unit of actual hunting performance gained. Number 8. Camo clothing. Sitka Stratus at $350 for a jacket, and First Light Catalyst at $300 are the premium camo systems. They are well made. They also cost more than most hunters spend on ammunition in 3 seasons. The Mossy Oak Performance Fleece System at $80 for jacket and pants combined, and the Realtree Edge Layering System at roughly $100 deliver functional camouflage with adequate scent control for a fraction of the premium price. Research from the University of Georgia confirmed that whitetails cannot distinguish individual camouflage patterns. They detect motion and silhouette, not pattern. A $80 Mossy Oak fleece jacket that breaks up your outline performs identically to a $350 Sitka jacket in the eyes of a deer at 30 yards. The Sitka is quieter fabric. That matters for bow hunting. If you hunt with a rifle, the fabric noise difference is irrelevant, and the $270 price gap is money better spent on cameras or stand access. The layering mistake most hunters make is buying one heavy jacket instead of building a 3-layer system. A moisture-wicking base layer at $25, a fleece mid-layer at $40, and a wind-resistant outer shell at $60 gives you temperature flexibility from 25 degrees to 60 degrees by adding or removing the mid-layer. A single heavy jacket at $350 is too hot at 50 degrees and too cold at 15 degrees. The $125 layering system covers a wider temperature range than the $350 single jacket, and dries faster because you can separate the layers overnight. I spent my first 8 seasons hunting in a single Carhartt jacket, and was either sweating or freezing on every sit depending on the day. The 3-layer system fixed it for less than half the price of the premium option. Number 9. Knives and tools. A Buck 110 folding hunter at $55, or a Benchmade steep country at $130, is what pro hunters carry for field dressing, which is the process of removing the internal organs of a harvested deer in the field. The fixed blade versus folding debate produces more internet arguments than any other gear topic. The pro hunter answer is simple. A fixed blade is easier to clean. A folder is easier to carry. For field dressing, blade steel matters more than blade style. Both the Buck 110 in 420HC steel and the Benchmade in S30V steel hold an edge through a full field dressing job without resharpening. I have used the Buck 110 for 14 years. It cost $55 and has dressed roughly 30 deer without a single blade failure. That is roughly $1.83 per deer. The ceramic knife my neighbor bought for $12 snapped on his second deer. Buy a knife once, buy it right. The one upgrade I made after 14 years with the Buck 110 was adding a Havalon Piranta at $35 with replaceable surgical blades for the initial hide opening and gut work. The replaceable blade is sharper out of the package than any fixed blade can be sharpened to by hand, and you swap blades in 10 seconds when it dulls. I use the Havalon for the precision cuts around the hide and diaphragm, and the Buck 110 for the heavier work of splitting the pelvis and removing the windpipe. 2 knives, $90 total, and the field dressing job takes 12 to 15 minutes instead of the 25 to 30 minutes it used to take with a single blade that was getting dull halfway through. Number 10 is the item I promised at the beginning, and it is the cheapest piece of gear on this list. A $25 Lansky sharpening system from any sporting goods store. The guide in Wyoming told me that the single most common gear failure he sees across hundreds of client hunts is a dull knife. A hunter with a $200 knife and a dull edge makes a worse cut than a hunter with a $30 knife and a sharp edge. The Lansky system clamps to the blade and holds the sharpening stone at a fixed angle, which means you get a consistent edge every time without the skill required for freehand sharpening. He said he has seen clients destroy $150 knives trying to sharpen them freehand on a stone, grinding the edge at the wrong angle until the blade is useless. The Lansky removes the skill variable from sharpening. A hunter who cannot sharpen a knife freehand can produce a surgical edge with the Lansky in 5 minutes. At $25, it is the most valuable piece of gear relative to its cost that any deer hunter can own. My guide buddy puts it this way. He has never lost a deer to a bad scope, a bad stand, or a bad pair of boots. He has watched clients lose deer because they could not finish a clean field dressing job with a blade that would not cut. A sharp knife is not a luxury. It is the foundation of everything that happens after the shot. Over a 10-year hunting career dressing an average of 2 deer per year, a dull knife adds roughly 15 minutes of struggling, sawing, and frustration to every field dressing job. That is 5 hours of unnecessary work over a decade, caused by a $25 tool you never bought. Think about that number. 5 hours of cold, bloody, frustrated cutting because of a $25 sharpener sitting in the sporting goods aisle that you walked past on the way to the scent products. Anything you have found that outperforms what I covered at a better price, leave it below. Next time we are covering the 5 preseason stand maintenance mistakes that cost more stands than storms. The pro hunters who fill tags consistently do not spend the most money. They spend it on the right things at the right price. That is the difference between a truck full of expensive gear and a freezer full of venison. Pick one.